The second issue that we must make diagnosis on is the levels of inequality. So, the post-1994 government outdid apartheid in terms of the levels of inequality.
Yeah.
Like we are the most unequal society in the world.
More than we were under apartheid.
More than we were under apartheid. I mean, under apartheid, the dispossession and the poverty of black people was legislated. It was law which prevented black people from owning the land, from owning certain business activities, from economically uplifting themselves.
From even applying for certain jobs.
Yes, from even applying for certain jobs.
Policies.
Yes, there were job reservation policies. But this post-1994 government outdid apartheid in terms of the levels of inequality, and the inequality are still racialized. Meaning that actually apartheid just got to be worsened under the so-called democracy in South Africa. So the economic apartheid is still a lived reality, and it's actually getting deeper and much more intense under a democratic project.
Let me just push you a little bit on that statement. I find that it's the most unconvincing argument when people say there's just no break between apartheid and post-1994.
Yes. And
even now you are saying economic apartheid
is persisting.
Yeah, but isn't it that we are leaving, we're not taking the people who have been running the country, we're giving them a free pass?
Yes.
Because when you control the state, you control economic resources.
Yes.
The example in question is that budget, which is passed every February, of over R1 trillion now. It's been over R1 trillion for some time.
Yeah, it's almost.
It's in the hands of a black government.
Yes.
That's an economic resource.
Yes.
But also it includes municipalities that generate revenue on their own.
Yes.
As well as state-owned companies, institutions, economic institutions that have been in the hands of this government since 1994. Actually, if the GDP of South Africa is 4 trillion rands,
yes,
about 2 trillion of that is in the hands of the state.
No, look.
What is when you say these people don't have economic power?
So the measure of economic benefits, it's what later absolutely accrues to the individual. Mm-hmm. What do the individuals get to gain afterwards? That is why even when you use this thing they call Gini coefficient of measuring the inequalities, they measure the assets and wealth that accrues to individuals. And then they say that the top 1% in South Africa is richer than 26 million people. Not even the 1%. 3 human beings.
Yes. But 3 families.
Yeah, 3 families are richer than 26 million human beings in South Africa. And in terms of the strategic sectors of the economy, like in the natural resources sector, in the retail chain stores, in the financial services sector, the control still reflects what apartheid was. There's never been any significant shift since 1994. So that is what still obtains in South Africa and contributes significantly to the inequality that is definitive of our situation. And then, of course, it happens in a way that leads to joblessness. That is another diagnostic that we have to deal with now, yes.
No, I get it. It seems to me that it's not enough to simply say, in terms of those measures, Gini coefficient, ownership, and all of that, the situation hasn't changed. We need to take it a step further, that it has not changed by choice this time.
Yeah, it's
like people called a democratic black majority government control almost 2 trillion rands of
it's
the money, and how come
it's by
the situation
choice.
is not changing?
Yeah, it can say it's by choice, but also can give it a classical interpretation as well, that it's just an administration that is being a committee that manages the common affairs of the dominant capitalist class. That the very fact that a transition happened under a capitalist neoliberal framework, there was no role that a government post-1994 was going to have a significant say as to just what happens with the allocation of resources outside of the dictates, 1, of domestic capital, 2, of international capital, 3, of multinational institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. So you've got a puppet government which inherited a political power or took over political power under whatever circumstances, under a neoliberal and capitalist environment. And they've got puppet masters, which primarily it's domestic capital, which the capitalist domestically will say, do this, do that. This is how you must manage your monetary and fiscal policy. And then you've got interest of global capitalism. And then you've got interest of the international financial institutions, primarily the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And those, by the way, they give direct instructions as to just what must happen on economic policy planning, on energy policy, on virtually everything else that the government does. So we really do not have an autonomous government that is able to perform its own functions outside of the dictates of global and domestic capitalism.
Okay, I think maybe...
Then they still did look at that diagnostic.
Yes, in terms of the
jobs,
current conditions, yes.
So, in 1994, when the transition happened to now the inclusive